They say that if you want to know who someone really is, don't look at who they embrace when the cameras are rolling. Look at who they leave out of the story when they're standing in the spotlight. For 10 long, exhausting years, I was the ghost in the machine of the Miller family. I was the one who kept the gears turning, the bills paid, the schedules synchronized, and the smiles polished for the neighbors. I was the architect of their peace, the silent engine of their comfort, but I was never allowed to actually live in the house I built. I was just the contractor, hired to maintain a legacy I was never permitted to share. My mother-in-law, Evelyn Miller, is a woman who treats love like a finite, hoarded resource, something to be rationed, weaponized, or kept in a vault. From the moment I married her son, David, I wasn't welcomed into a family. I was viewed as a competitor who had somehow pulled off a heist, stealing her favorite prize. Evelyn didn't use an axe to keep me out. She was far more surgical than that. She used 1,000 tiny needles, pricking at my confidence, my background, and my worth every single day for a decade. It was the way she would look right through me when I was speaking, as if I were a pane of glass. It was the way she would hand-knit intricate, beautiful sweaters for David and our 2 children every Christmas, while handing me a generic store-bought candle she'd clearly grabbed from a clearance bin on her way over. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I leaned into my fixer personality. I thought that if I could just be helpful enough, efficient enough, and indispensable enough, the ice would eventually melt. I thought service was the currency of belonging. I didn't realize that to someone like Evelyn, service isn't a gift. It's an obligation she feels she's owed by people she considers beneath her. The build-up to her 60th birthday started nearly 6 months ago. Evelyn didn't just want a party, she wanted a diamond gala. She wanted a coronation. She sat me down in her pristine beige living room, a room I spent every other Saturday helping her deep clean, and handed me a leather-bound notebook. Inside were lists of demands that would have made a professional event planner quit on the spot. She wanted rustic but refined. She wanted a specific vintage of champagne that was out of stock across 3 states. She wanted a hand-selected guest list of the right people. I was working 45 hours a week as a senior project manager, a job that requires every ounce of my mental energy. But because I was still chasing that elusive, good daughter-in-law gold star, I took the notebook. I balanced my spreadsheets at work with caterer bids. I spent my lunch breaks calling florists to find the exact shade of antique white orchids she insisted on. I spent my evenings after putting the kids to bed hand-stamping silver foil onto 300 heavy stock invitations. My fingers were literally raw from the repetitive motion, but I kept going. David saw it all. He saw me hunched over the kitchen table at Thoudazam. He saw the stress headaches that made me nauseous. He saw the way his mother would call me at 3,000 in the afternoon just to berate me because the linen samples I sent over were too ivory and not white enough. And every time I looked at him for support, every time I hoped he would say, "Mom, Sarah is doing this as a favor, please be kind," he would just offer a sympathetic wince and say, "You know how she is, babe, she's just stressed. It'll be over soon." You know how she is. Those 5 words became the soundtrack to my marginalization. The day of the gala arrived. The ballroom of the historic hotel looked like a dream. The orchids filled the air with a thick, sweet scent that cost more than my first car. I had personally vetted every server. I had spent $3,000 of my own personal savings money I'd earned from my year-end bonus to cover the premium open bar and the extra course of lobster risotto because I knew Evelyn would complain if the menu wasn't substantial. David's architectural firm had been hit by a slow quarter, so I stepped up. I didn't want him to feel the sting of not being able to give his mother the world. I thought I was being a partner. I thought I was being family. During the party, I was a blur of motion. I was checking the temperature of the wine, discreetly guiding the photographer, and making sure Evelyn's elderly friends had chairs near the heaters. I was the stagehand in a play I had written, directed, and funded. Then came the centerpiece of the evening, the toast. The room went quiet. Evelyn stood at the head of the long mahogany table, draped in a silk gown I had helped her pick out over a 4-hour shopping trip, where she criticized my own outfit choices the entire time. She held her glass high, looking every bit the triumphant matriarch. She began to speak. Her voice was practiced, dripping with a warmth she only used in public. She spoke for 20 minutes. She talked about the Miller legacy. She spoke about her late husband. She spoke about David, calling him the shining star of my life, the perfect son, and the man who provides the foundation for this entire family. She called our 2 children to the stage, praising their Miller eyes and their noble spirits. She thanked the hotel staff. She thanked the florist by name. She even thanked her bridge club for keeping her young. I stood by the kitchen doors, a tray of hors d'oeuvres in my hand because one of the servers had tripped and I was helping clear the floor. I waited. I waited for her to say, and I couldn't have done this without Sarah. I waited for her to acknowledge that the woman who paid for the very champagne she was holding was standing right there. The speech ended. The room erupted in applause. She sat down, pulling David into a hug. My name was never mentioned. Not once. It wasn't just an accidental omission, it was a targeted erasure. In front of 300 people, I was invisible. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that no amount of ballroom heat could touch. Later that night, the guests were dancing, the music thumping through the floorboards. I was in the back hallway near the service entrance, trying to catch my breath and rub my aching feet. Evelyn stepped out of the restroom and saw me. The public mask, the one that beamed with Miller pride, slipped. She looked at me with a disdain so sharp it felt physical. She walked over and patted my cheek with a hand that felt like ice. "You look exhausted, Sarah," she said, her voice a low, melodic poison. "Perhaps the help should learn to delegate better. You really should be very grateful tonight. You're lucky my son chose you. A lot of better women from families with history with breeding wanted him. You're just the one who happened to be there when he was lonely. Try not to ruin the photos with that sour look on your face." I was paralyzed. My brain scrambled for a comeback, a defense, a "how dare you," but the conditioning of a decade is hard to break. I just watched her swirl her silk skirt and walk back into the light of the ballroom. I didn't tell David that night. I didn't want to ruin his mother's big night. I drove her home. I listened to her complain that the sea base was adequate but uninspired. I went home, took off my heels, and cried in the shower so David wouldn't hear me. The breaking point didn't happen in that ballroom. It happened 2 weeks later, on a mundane Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my desk, a cup of lukewarm coffee in my hand, when I opened Facebook. There it was. Evelyn had posted a featured album titled The Miller Legacy, A Night to Remember. The cover photo was the one the professional photographer had spent 10 minutes posing. It was supposed to be the full family shot. In the original photo taken on the grand staircase, it was David, our son, our daughter, Evelyn, and me. I was standing on the far left, my hand on David's arm, wearing a navy blue dress I had saved up for months to buy. But in the photo Evelyn posted, I was gone. She had cropped the image so precisely that the edge of the frame ended exactly where David's shoulder began. She had removed me so thoroughly that not even a stray thread of my dress remained. The caption underneath read, "My real family. My everything. The only ones who truly belong in the Miller circle, so blessed to have this pure bloodline." I stared at the screen until the pixels started to blur. It wasn't just a crop. It was a declaration of war. It was the final piece of evidence that no matter what I did, no matter how much of myself I poured into their cup, they would always see me as a leak in the container. I walked into the living room. David was sitting on the sofa, watching a highlight reel of a golf tournament. I didn't say a word. I just handed him my phone. He looked at it. He read the caption. He looked at the cropped photo. Then, he handed the phone back to me and sighed that same, heavy, "not this again" sigh. "Sarah, come on," he said. "She's 60. She doesn't understand how the cropping tool works on her phone. She probably just wanted a close-up of the kids. You're being way too sensitive." "Sensitive?" My voice was trembling. "David, she called you, the kids, and herself, the only ones who truly belong. She literally cut me out of the family, and she told me at the party that I was just the help and that you should have married someone with breeding. Are you going to tell me I imagined that too?" David stood up, looking annoyed. "She's old-fashioned, Sarah. She says things she doesn't mean when she's been drinking champagne. Why do you have to cause drama now? The party was a success, everyone is happy, and you're picking a fight over a Facebook post. For the sake of the kids, just let it go. Keep the peace." "Keep the peace," I whispered. "That's all you ever say. But whose peace are we keeping, David? Because I haven't had a moment of peace since I said I do. I've been your mother's servant, her banker, and her punching bag, and you stood there and held the bag for her." He walked out of the room. He didn't want to hear it. He wanted to go back to his golf and his comfortable, quiet life where his wife did all the work and his mother took all the credit. That was the moment the fixer died. The woman who wanted to be liked was replaced by a woman who wanted to be respected. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was in project manager mode now. I started a new spreadsheet. This one wasn't for a party. It was for my life. For the last 3 years, David's business had been in a slump. We had kept it quiet from the family, but the reality was that my salary was covering 80% of our mortgage and 100% of our kids' private school tuition. But there was another expense David didn't know about. Evelyn's husband had left her the house, but he hadn't left her much of a liquid pension. To keep her in that big, drafty brick mansion, she refused to downsize. I had been secretly transferring $1,500 into her account on the first of every month. I did it because David was too proud to tell her he couldn't afford it, and I didn't want her to lose her home. I had been subsidizing the lifestyle of the woman who considered me the help. I logged into my bank portal. I found the recurring transfer. Cancel. I called the boutique grocery delivery service that brought her organic produce and high-end meats every Tuesday morning, another bill I had been paying for 3 years. Cancel. I called the landscaping company that kept her Miller Gardens looking like a magazine cover. Cancel. Then I did the hardest part. I went into our shared family calendar and deleted every Evelyn chore I had scheduled for the next 6 months. The doctor's appointments I drove her to. The pharmacy runs. The heavy cleaning I did every other Saturday because she didn't trust strangers in her house. I sent a short professional text to the Miller family group chat, the one with David's sisters and his mother. Hi everyone. Due to some recent realizations about my place in this family, I will be stepping back from all logistical and financial support for Evelyn effective immediately. I'm sure the real family and those who truly belong will be more than happy to step up and handle her mortgage, her groceries, her medical transport, and her home maintenance. I'll be focusing on myself and my children from now on. Best, Sarah. Then I muted the thread. The silence lasted exactly 48 hours. On Thursday morning, the Tuesday grocery delivery didn't arrive. On Friday morning, Evelyn's bank sent her an automated alert that her mortgage payment had failed due to insufficient funds. The explosion was magnificent. My phone started vibrating so hard it walked across the nightstand. David's sisters were the first to strike. Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom is in tears. She thinks she's being evicted. How could you be so petty over a Facebook photo? I didn't reply. Then came Evelyn. She didn't call me. She wouldn't stoop that low. She called David. She screamed so loud I could hear her from across the bedroom. She called me a snake, a cold-hearted interloper, and a woman who was trying to destroy the Miller name. David came into the kitchen, his face pale, his hands shaking. Sarah, what have you done? My mother is having a nervous breakdown. She says you cut off her money? What money? What are you talking about? I sat there, sipping my tea, looking at him. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to fix his discomfort. I let him stand in it. I've been paying $1,500 a month for her mortgage, David, for 3 years, plus her groceries, plus her gardener, plus the help me who spent 10 hours a week being her unpaid personal assistant. I've spent over $60,000 of my own money to keep her in that house and keep her happy. David's jaw dropped. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were stressed about the firm and I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted to keep the peace. But then I realized that I was paying for the privilege of being insulted. I was funding my own erasure. If she wants to be a Miller, and if she thinks that bloodline is so pure and exclusive, then she can figure out how to pay for it herself. Or you can, or your sisters can. I can't afford that right now, Sarah. You know that, David shouted. Then I guess she'll have to sell the house and move into a condo, like a normal 60-year-old woman. I'm not her bank anymore, David, and I'm not her servant. You're being vindictive, he spat. You've changed. You're not the woman I married. You're right, I said, and my voice was like stone. The woman you married thought her value was tied to how much she could endure. That woman is gone. I'm choosing myself now. If that makes me vindictive in your eyes, I can live with that. But I won't live as a ghost anymore. The next few weeks were a descent into chaos. The real family tried to step up, but it turns out that Miller pride doesn't actually pay the bills. David's sisters, who both live in high-end apartments and drive luxury SUVs, suddenly became very quiet when they realized how much work and money it took to maintain Evelyn's life. They tried to organize a rotation to drive her to her specialists, but that lasted exactly 1 week before they started complaining about the traffic and the unreasonable demands their mother was making. Evelyn sent me one final email. It wasn't an apology. It was a list of grievances. She told me I was classless, that I had tricked her son, and that I was poisoning the grandchildren against her. I replied with one sentence, I am not poisoning them, I am showing them what it looks like to have a mother who respects herself. Please do not contact me again. David moved into the guest room. The house is quiet, but it's a heavy, uncomfortable quiet. He doesn't know how to exist in a world where I don't automatically smooth over every wrinkle. He's angry, yes. He's upset. But more than that, he's lost. He's realizing that the peace he cherished was never real. It was a luxury I was providing for him at my own expense. Yesterday, I was sitting in the backyard watching my kids play. My daughter, who is 8, came over and sat in my lap. She looked at me for a long time and said, "Mommy, why don't we go to Grandma's house on Saturdays anymore?" I took a deep breath. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to burden her with the ugliness of adult pride. "Well, sweetie," I said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "sometimes you have to realize that you can only stay in a place where people are kind to you." And Mommy realized that it was time to spend our Saturdays in places where we feel loved and seen. Does that make sense? She nodded slowly. Grandma was always grumpy anyway. I like it better when we stay here and play. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. My children were watching me. They were learning what it looks like to walk away from a table where respect is no longer being served. If I had stayed, if I had kept keeping the peace, I would have been teaching my daughter that it's okay to be erased as long as you have the right last name. I was teaching my son that it's okay to let the woman you love be humiliated as long as it keeps your mother quiet. I wasn't just saving myself. I was saving them. The Miller family is divided now. Half the relatives think I'm a monster. The other half, the ones who always saw through Evelyn's act, have sent me private messages of support, telling me they're proud of me for finally standing up. David and I are in counseling, but I don't know if it's going to work. He still talks about forgiveness and moving on, but he hasn't yet grasped the concept of accountability. He wants me to go back to the way things were because the way things are now is hard for him. He doesn't understand that for me, the way things were was killing me. But the most incredible thing is how I feel. For 10 years, I felt like I was holding my breath. Every social interaction was a minefield. Every holiday was a performance. I was constantly checking my hair, my clothes, my tone of voice, trying to find the version of Sarah that would finally be enough for the Millers. Now? I don't care. I wear what I want. I say what I think. I spend my bonus money on a weekend trip for me and the kids. I don't check the family group chat. I don't worry about whether the Miller gardens are being weeded or if Evelyn has the right vintage of champagne in her fridge. I've realized that the greatest revenge isn't an explosion or a dramatic scene, it's simply withdrawing your presence. It's letting the people who underestimate you experience the full weight of your absence. It's letting them see exactly what life looks like without the help they refuse to acknowledge. A few nights ago, I was looking through the photos on my own phone. I found that original photo from the gala, the one where I was standing next to David, my hand on his shoulder, smiling despite the exhaustion. I looked at it for a long time. I realized I didn't hate the photo anymore. I didn't feel the sting of the crop. Because when I looked at the woman in the navy blue dress, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a woman who had finally decided to stop being the background of someone else's story. I took that photo and I made it my wallpaper. Not because of the Millers, but because it's a reminder of the night I finally realized that my presence is a privilege, not a requirement. If you're listening to this, and you're the one holding the family together while they tear you down, if you're the one keeping the peace while losing your mind, I want you to know something. You don't owe anyone your light if they're only going to use it to cast you in a shadow. You don't have to fund your own disrespect. You don't have to be the ghost in the family photo. It's okay to be the problem. It's okay to be difficult. It's okay to stop helping people who would never help you. The peace you're keeping isn't worth the price you're paying, because the only way to truly belong is to belong to yourself first. My name is Sarah. I was the help. I was the ghost. I was the contractor. But today, I'm the architect, and I'm building a new life, one where I'm never ever cropped out of the picture. The Miller legacy didn't start with bloodlines or mansions or diamond galas. It ended the moment they lost the only person who actually cared enough to keep it alive. And as for me, I'm finally living in the light. And the view from here? It's absolutely beautiful. I want to leave you with one final thought. There's a story about a woman who spent her life tending to a beautiful, rare rose bush in her neighbor's garden. She watered it every morning. She pruned it every spring. She fought off the pests and protected it from the frost. The neighbor never thanked her. In fact, the neighbor told everyone who passed by that the rose bush grew so beautifully because the soil was special, because the house had history. The woman was just someone who liked to play in the dirt. One day, the woman stopped coming. She took her watering can and her shears, and she went and planted a small seed in her own backyard. The neighbor's rosebush withered within a month. The special soil wasn't enough. the history wasn't enough. It needed the hand that cared. Meanwhile, the woman's own garden began to bloom. It wasn't as big as the neighbor's garden. It didn't have a grand fence or a legacy. But every flower in it was healthy, every leaf was vibrant. And most importantly, when she sat in that garden, she knew that every single petal belonged to her. Don't spend your life watering someone else's garden while your own heart is a desert. Go home, plant your own seeds, and watch how fast the people who took you for granted realized that the soil was never the secret. It was always you. It was always your heart, your work, and your light. And you deserve to see it bloom. Take care of yourselves, stand your ground. And remember, if they want to crop you out of the photo, make sure they realize they're losing the best part of the picture. You are enough. You have always been enough. And it's time you started living like it.